and let us all do we can to build a better future. So RFK Jr. had to walk back his support for Roger Waters. Now, the thing is, I found it interesting, especially on yesterday's Twitter space, in which, there was very little questions from the audience, regular people, towards RFK Jr. I would have preferred there to be more questions from the audience and people, from the press, but hey, you know what? Maybe I'm shooting too high. But Max Blumenthal showed up on the Hill Rising, where he talked about what's happening in Palestine, what's happening to the Palestinian people, and the actions of the Israeli government. So I want to play this video. I won't play it all in its full entirety. I'll play at least a good portion of it. But I think it's important that we hear a different perspective and really have to call into question why RFK Jr., again, deleted it. Because I played a video where Craig Pasajadula of the Convo Couch asked him that question. And to RFK Jr.'s credit, at the end, he did somewhat say that he does support the Palestinian people. But how much, though? Because that is a serious question. So I want to play this for all of you and hear the words of Max Blumenthal.
His deleted tweet in support of Roger Waters' controversial anti-Nazi protest last week. Let's watch that.
Mr. Kennedy, a lot of people are confused about the tweet storm. I call it the tweet heard around the world. A couple of tweets were put up in support of Roger Waters and then taken down. Do you want to give us a little explanation of why they were taken down and also your stance on Israel and Palestine?
I tweeted that. I made the tweet applauding Roger Waters' courage in opposing the COVID mandates and the Ukraine war. I was unaware of his position on Israel. And when I learned that, I immediately took it down. My position of Israel is that I support Israel. My family has a long relationship with Israel. I support its right to exist and its right to protect its security.
And the Palestinians?
And a humane outcome and a recognition ultimately of the aspirations of the Palestinian people is important for everybody.
You got a lot of pushback for that response. Kennedy was also asked about his stance on Cuba.
Mr. Kennedy, recently on an interview, you said that your uncle has more streets named after him in Latin America than any other president that's held office. What is your position on Cuba? Are you willing to get rid of the blockade on day one?
Yes.
Joining us now to weigh in is our rising panel. Max Blumenthal is editor at the Grayzone, and Joel Rubin is partner at Democracy Partners. Welcome to Rising to both of you.
Good to see you.
Thanks so much, Bree.
All right, I'll start with you, Max. As I'm sure you're aware, a lot of the left was critical of his statements on several levels. First and foremost, do you think it's credible that RFK Jr. didn't realize what he was offering Roger Waters support for when Roger Waters, of course, was embroiled in a controversy about his choice to have a satirical anti-fascist costume during his concert that was reminiscent of a Nazi armband? If that was why everyone was talking about Roger Waters and what led to RFK Jr.'s support of Roger Waters on Twitter that was later retracted, what do you make of his recharacterization of why he supported him and his generalized comments there on the Israel-Palestine conflict?
Also, real quick, if you've been living under a rock and have not been following Roger Waters and what he does during the show, The Wall, clearly listen to more music, maybe, I don't know, touch some grass. Roger Waters has been doing that show. And again, it's satire. The key word is satire, 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 satire. It is not an endorsement or glorifying any fascist government, unlike what we see happening with the Ukraine military. But for those who don't know, again, the definition is satire. Noun, the use of humor, irony, exaggeration, or ridicule to expose and criticize people's stupidity or vices, particularly in the context of contemporary politics and other topical issues. The Wall, and in which the lead character has a dream, a fantasy in which he becomes a dictator Again, that was all satire. And for those who don't know, Roger Waters' father fought and died in the Second World War. So, and plus his earliest memory is when it was on the day of the Allied powers' victory over the Empire of Japan. So, in other words, everyone that's so shocked and triggered by Roger Waters' performance in The Wall, please grow up. For the rest of us, don't start destroying music. I know a lot of mainstream corporate and SJW activists want to destroy, creativity, but stop it. Get help.
Yeah, I don't find it credible. I know Bobby Kennedy Jr. He knows better. And I've been supportive of him as a candidate who can actually open up space to discuss issues that are frozen out by an undemocratic Democratic Party. And I don't think this is credible. He knows that Roger Waters is the world's most famous supporter of liberating Palestinians from open-air prisons like the Gaza Strip, hideous refugee camps like Sabra and Shatila, and 70 plus years of continuous ethnic cleansing. He has to know that. Roger Waters actually never opposed COVID mandates, so I don't even know what he's talking about there. It appears with this walkback that he has fallen under pressure from one of the most powerful and undemocratic forces opposed to the First Amendment in the US, and that is the Israel lobby. And it feeds the perception when Bobby Kennedy Jr. marches in the Israel Day parade with Shmuley Boteach, a far-right former reality show race hustler whose entire salary is paid by the Likudnik Adelson family, that he's not actually an anti-establishment candidate, that he is fallen under the sway of far-right Likudnik oligarchs who favor bombing Iran. And this is troubling to the grassroots supporters, including the grassroots base of the Democratic Party that he's running in. For the first time, we've seen a Gallup poll show that more Democrats support Palestine over Israel. I mean, it's a bad way of framing the question, but it shows that he's out of step with the grassroots base and fuels the perception that the Israel lobby is even controlling this outsider campaign.
I also want to pull up the fact here again, there are plenty of documentaries showing what's happening to the Palestinian people. It is tyrannical and brutal. It's not for the faint of heart. And the actions of the Israeli government towards them, it's unacceptable. No human should be treated like that at all. And yet there is no end in sight.
Joel, how would you respond to that?
Sure. I mean, Robbie, first and foremost, I agree with Max that it's not credible. I think Bobby Kennedy clearly was backtracking on a position that he was fully aware of regarding Roger Waters and Waters' anti-Semitism and support for positions on Israel that run antithetical, quite frankly, to human rights. He's talking about displacing Jews from the state of Israel in order to achieve peace. That's not peace. That's a humanitarian crisis that he's advocating for. And I think also it's very important to note that Bobby Kennedy's family history and the Kennedy family history in support of Israel and Jewish self-determination is real. I actually think at some point, though, we do have to listen to the candidate, and maybe it's a change from the tweet. But I actually think he was sincere in his position. I think it was strong that he said he supports human rights and peace for the Palestinians, a state for Palestine. Quite frankly, as well within that. And, he's not credible in the backtrack, but I think we have to look at the voice, and the voice is saying something eminently reasonable, and it's pointing out.
No, there's nothing reasonable about that. Look, people were trying to censor Roger Waters for BS reasons. All right. A lot of people have exposed themselves as nothing but extremists and reactionary towards Roger Waters' performance. This isn't the first time people have tried to smear Roger Waters. This isn't the first time people have tried to take his words out of context. Again, you got to be living under a rock and not know where Roger Waters stands in regards to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Okay? You can't pretend to be stupid. Don't do that. All right? So, in other words, deleting that tweet was the dumbest thing ever.
The Roger Waters and what Waters is saying and how he's doing it not only is offensive, but even the German Jewish community found it deeply anti-Semitic. He's up there shooting pig balloons with Stars of David on it. Nobody can argue that that's nothing but adding fuel to the fire of hatred of Jews.
No, it's not. It's not. It's not.
Max, I want you to weigh in on the idea of the underlying substance of what Roger Waters is doing at his concert. Is it, in fact, anti-Semitic, as Rabbi Shmuley characterized it on Twitter? I just want to read this quote into the record. Rabbi Shmuley tweeted out a picture of himself with RFK Jr. over the weekend, saying, "Bobby told me he had no idea that Waters was a vicious anti-Semite, and when he studied the issue..."
Roger Waters is not an anti-Semite. All right? Simple as that. So again, RFK Jr. Any statements on that for your friend who made that really horrible smearing statement about Roger Waters?
And the facts, he immediately deleted the tweet. I believe Bobby, and I thank him for his repudiation of Waters. What do you make of that characterization of Roger Waters?
Well, it's amazing to see someone as forceful and brave on so many issues as Bobby Kennedy Jr. allowing a discredited race hustler like Shmuley Boteach to put words in his mouth. And it really emphasizes how powerful the Israel lobby is. But to the point about Roger Waters, he's performing The Wall. This is a 43-year-old rock film that is possibly the most famous rock film in history. And what he's performing there in his concerts, which he has been doing across the United States with no complaint, is mocking a fascist demagogue. He's paying tribute to Anne Frank in his performances. The problem for the Israel apartheid lobby is that he's also paying tribute to Shireen Abu Akleh, the journalist who was killed in the line of fire deliberately, apparently, by Israeli forces. And they cannot allow a universal interpretation of the Holocaust to include all people. So they have to demonize Roger Waters and show how unhip and uncool and out of it they are, that they don't even know what The Wall is. And I really feel sorry for Bobby Kennedy Jr. to be wrapped up in this and to allow himself to become kind of a hostage. So I want to extend an invitation to Bobby. If you can suffer through the likes of Crystal Ball lecturing you on the science, then you could join me live at the Grayzone for an open and civil discussion about what I've witnessed for years, reporting from behind the Israeli apartheid walls around the Gaza Strip and the West Bank. And let's talk about this issue openly. Let's talk about the ethno-supremacist ideology and the settler colonists injected into the heart of historic Palestine in an open way, because that's what your supporters want.
So we're going to stop right there. And that's reasonable. RFK Jr. You showed up in Twitter space with Elon Musk. You dealt with that overbearing lecture from Crystal Ball. Show up on the Grayzone. Show up on independent media. Again, Roger Waters has been doing the show The Wall since before yours truly was ever born. And even as I was growing up, eventually I was able to get introduced to music like all of us when we're young. And we're able to tell the difference between what's good and what's bad. And The Wall is an outstanding, legendary performance. It is a work of art. And it's satire. And the way Roger Waters has been smeared by people who are trying to discredit him and call him an anti-Semite. He's being critical of the government, not of a people or religion. Two things different altogether. RFK Jr., you're smart enough to tell the difference. He's being critical of the Israeli government and its policies. He is not being racist or anti-Semitic to the Jewish faith or to the Jewish people. Critical of the government, okay? And giving home, and for his show, The Wall, he's giving homage to the brave Anne Frank. He's shining a light on how ridiculous fascism is. maybe, I don't know, Roger, take some time, watch The Wall, watch the Roger Waters performance, and you'll realize that it's nothing but satire. He's not being anti-Semitic. I mean, if anybody, including everyone here in the viewing audience, everyone knows. In fact, hey, let's have democracy in the chat. I know, controversial statement. Type 1 if you think that, oh my goodness, Pink Floyd, The Wall, it's so terrible. It triggers my mind. I don't want to think for myself. I want to hide under a rock. I never want to see it again. Type 1 if that's how you feel. Type 2 if you're like, dude, The Wall is a work of art. Stand against censorship. Stand against those that want to silence dissenting voices. Stand for free speech. Support free speech. Support art and creativity. Let's see how all of you vote on that one, okay? Because the thing is, if there is something that does trigger you or get you upset, be an adult. Don't watch it. But when you see art, know that the artist made that, be it music, a picture, a movie, or TV show, for you to interpret in your own way. RFK Jr. Go on the Grayzone. Be interviewed by Max Blumenthal. If you could sit through Crystal Ball's BS, you can at least give time out of your day to hear the words and the questions from Max Blumenthal.